Welcome back. We're continuing a really highly timely and I think important conversation with Robert Charles, a former practitioner of national security policy in a number of administrations, but also by training an attorney, a former clerk in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, a man who knows his way around the judicial branch as well as the congressional and executive branches. And Bobby, we were talking about the second of three very important court rulings just handed down in the past day or two. And I wanted to get just your further thoughts about the juxtaposition of this affirmation by the Supreme Court on a 6-3 vote margin, no less, about the right to uh, bear arms and be able to go outside of your house bearing arms, no less, in your self defense, on the one hand, and what the Congress of the United States is in the process of doing that will, it seems, restrict your right to bear arms and otherwise defend yourself. Give us a
Yeah. So
sense of where this sorts
yes,
out.
yeah. We're in an acute moment, an acute angle in the future of in terms of the future of the country and how we look at our constitutional rights. On the one hand, the Democrats in Congress and a few Republicans have concluded that the right answer is not to keep people responsible and return a degree of moral compass to the society, but rather to choose as their favorite villain the firearm. And as a result, you have this law that appears to be about to be on the books that does, in fact, initiate new restrictions on gun ownership. At the same time, the Supreme Court is saying, and the Supreme Court is ultimately Marbury v. Madison. They are the ones that have the right to say what the law really is, and I think this law will be challenged. But they are saying at the exact same time, in the exact same breath, they are saying that the right to keep and bear arms is what the founders said it was. And it doesn't matter whether you're talking about a musket or a 9 millimeter. You have the right in society to, or a cannon to protect your family, yourself, and ultimately to create a deterrent. And this was the cornerstone of it, a deterrent against government overreach. And honestly, this decision is so common sense. And I'm in a state right now, physically in the state of Maine, and Maine is a constitutional carry state. You can open carry, you can close carry. You don't even need a permit. That happens to be the way America was most of our life. And if you go back to the 1960s, Frank, just one last thing, and that is the implications. So the implications of the Roe case is that more children will have a chance to live, and states get the right to protect those lives. The implications of the New York case is that we may return to a period of time in which deterrence of crime on a day-to-day basis goes up. Why? Because when we did not have gun restrictions, when this kind of law, this Supreme Court case, was more the law of the land back in the early 1960s, mid 1960s, early 1970s, between a half and two-thirds of all Americans owned guns, and the overall effect of that was that there was half the amount of gun crime in this country, half the number of shootings and deaths from guns than we have today. So if you think about it for a minute, and there's a lot written about this, the implications of this case are in some ways likely to make the United States safer, to make people, of course, people will feel more empowered and they will think about it. Number one buyers of guns today, the number one high growth purchasers of guns are minorities and women. So think about it. That means that people who were previously worried will say, no, I have a right to protect my kids, myself, my life, my family, my neighborhood. And what happens is, it's like that, it deterrent people. Crime doesn't happen where people think they're going to get
Peace
caught or
through
shot.
strength.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
we're both, I know, big aficionados of the principle of peace through strength. This is applying it at the very local level. From your lips to God's ears about the cumulative effect of this very important piece of judicial opinion, as well as what's going to happen with the Congress. Let me turn to a last case that is particularly noteworthy. You mentioned that you're up in Maine. It involves the state of Maine and the right to receive state funds for religious education. Walk us through the ruling in this case, Bobby Charles, if you would,
Yep.
please.
Again, Frank, what a wonderful moment. I mean, and an historical moment in American history, because the Supreme Court, as constituted now, is saying we're going to take the Constitution seriously. That means the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, and all of the amendments, because they come together with those articles that allow us to have Congress and judiciary independent, et cetera. This case involved a family. So in the state of Maine, about half, I grew up in this state, about half of all the communities in this state, or school units, administrative units, or districts, do not have a high school. And indeed, the one I grew up, the town I grew up in, did not have a high school. And so what happens is you have to go to some other town to get to high school. So what in this particular case happened is the state was giving vouchers and said, well, you can go to another public high school, or you can go to another private, or to a private high school, but you cannot go to a private high school that is viewed as having a religious affiliation, and potentially teaching, and teaching moral values in the form of a religious credo. The Supreme Court took this case, Macon v. Carson, I think,
Carson
and
versus
said,
Macon. Yeah,
Carson versus Macon, I think, right? So, and said, no, that's not right. Um, the Constitution permits, if you as a state are going to give a voucher and allow it to be used in a private school or public school, it can also be used in a school that teaches uh, religious teachings. And the beauty of this, Frank, again, the longer we live, the closer, the more you see that what goes around comes around. When this country was founded, that was where most of the teaching occurred, either from the Bible in a public school, or in the church environment, or in a church related environment. So as time passed, the liberals thought, no, we got to drive a wedge here. And they misunderstood, and I would say intentionally misinterpreted the First Amendment. The First Amendment says you have the free exercise of your religion, but there cannot be an establishment of religion. And if you think about the origins of that, what it simply meant is we don't want the federal government to become the King of England and tell us that we have to worship under one faith. That's all.
exactly right. Bobby Charles, you've walked through this brilliantly and very succinctly. We appreciate that very much, as we're hard out of time. Thank you for joining us today. As always, my friend, I look forward to visit with you next week. Look forward to talking to the rest of you. I hope as well next week. Thank you for participating in this edition of Securing America. I hope you feel better equipped to help us in protecting the country we love, and that equipped with that information and more at securingamerica.tv, you will go forth and multiply.